Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're standing on a rain-darkened doorstep where lilies are still wilting from the funeral, where the porch light hums like a patient insect, and where a black suit buttons itself against the chill as if that could hold a life together. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background. And let's begin tonight's journey together. I'm Nora! And the doorbell rang less than 12 hours after we lowered my husband into the ground. The lilies on the hall table smelled like a memory trying too hard. When I opened the door, my son Ethan stood there with his hands already in surrender, which is how I know he'd practiced the speech. Beside him, Sienna wore a soft sweater stretched by a pregnancy she liked to curate for cameras. "Mom," Ethan started, voice wobbling between groan and boy. "We need an answer tonight. Either you sign the house over to us or we'll move you into care where you can be looked after." He had the decency to look at his shoes when he said, "looked after." On a better day, I might have offered tea. This wasn't tea's day. "Come in," I said, and the porch light flickered, like even the electricity recognized an ultimatum when it heard one. Sienna moved first, gliding toward the mirror to check the shape of her sorrow. I caught a flash of the calendar in the entry, little pencil notes, hospice visits, days that refused to be romanticized. Ethan hovered by the umbrella stand as if objects could make better adults than we do. "We've already talked to a broker," Sienna said, eyes bright, the way a person's get when they've mistaken momentum for morality. "If you sign tonight, escrow opens Monday. You'll have a nice suite, therapies, chef, activities." She delivered activities with the pep of a cruise director. Light joke 1. I imagined the brochure, shuffleboard through grief, bingo with boundaries. I asked Ethan if he wanted water. He nodded like thirst was a sin. "It's too soon," I said. "Your father hasn't even..." I stopped because I hate sentences that pretend the body isn't gone. "It's too soon," I repeated, honest and empty. "We're hemorrhaging rent," Sienna said, as if my sorrow were an invoice. "And the baby..." She rested a hand on her belly, long nails like punctuation. Something about that gesture tugged at a stray thread in my mind. I couldn't place it. Only felt that the timing of everything at this door didn't line up. Elder wisdom. When a demand arrives dressed as concern, don't argue with the costume. Ask for the calendar, dates, amounts, names. Paper is the quietest truth teller in a crowded room. "I'm not signing tonight," I said. Ethan winced like I'd nudged a bruise. Sienna smoothed her sweater and tried a lower register. "If you don't, I'll have to be very honest about Ethan's habits," she said, finding a word that could fail a breathalyzer. "He has a little problem, and lenders might want to know." Ethan's eyes cut sideways, a child caught between playground and principal's office. "Sienna," he whispered, warning and plea. Light joke 2. The fridge in the kitchen chose that moment to make fresh ice. Cheerful as a party nobody asked for, it's always good to be reminded appliances don't read the room. "Let's do this at the table," I said. Because chairs are a mercy in tense weather. I set 3 glasses of water like a sacrament and placed a pen beside each. Not for signing, just to give fidgeting something that wasn't me. "We can talk," I offered. "But not decide. I'm calling someone in the morning." "A lawyer?" Sienna scoffed. "An exterminator," I said. For the word tonight, it keeps showing up where it doesn't belong. Ethan's mouth twitched, a muscle remembering humor. Sienna didn't. Academic phrase of the day, ultimatum game. The public argument in behavioral economics where one person proposes a split of money and the other can accept or reject. People often reject unfair offers even if it costs them. Dignity, it turns out, will pay to keep its spine. Sienna pulled a folder from her tote. Printouts, emails, a pre-written care plan with a photo of a facility where every hallway looked like it had been smoothed by a committee. "It's safest," she said, "with your heart and all." "My cardiologist," I replied, "is not currently a real estate agent." I glanced again at the calendar in my head. Ethan's hours, the burial. The ultrasound picture Sienna had posted weeks ago with captions like, 28 weeks today. The belly now looked farther along. Maybe it was just angles. But the math itched. Light joke 3. The cat, who has never cared for human theater, leapt onto a chair and sat like a tiny judge, whiskers stern, tail punctual. She blinked at Sienna with the polite contempt only felines and librarians can manage. "I'll make it simple," Sienna said, voice bringing its own lighting. "Sign the deed into our names, and I keep quiet about Ethan's little issue. Don't sign?" And I press send. She lifted her phone, a threat disguised as a manicure. Ethan's throat clicked like a bad latch. I remembered him at 8, hiding baseball cards he'd misplaced instead of stolen. I remembered teaching him to say, "I did it," and the way that sentence put scaffolding in a boy. "You two need to go," I said. "We're done for tonight." Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "Mom, please." Sienna stepped ahead of him, as if she could intercept family like a pass. "You can be free of this old house," she said. "We'll start fresh. Victor can help with the bridge loan." She said it fast, a slip, a name she hadn't meant to let out. Victor. It sat in the air like a dropped key. I let my face offer nothing. "Who is Victor?" I asked. "Our broker," she said too quickly. Ethan's eyebrows flinched. The cat judged. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Door chains were originally marketed as privacy latches for hotels, so you could crack the door without committing to the guest. They're not meant to stop a battering ram, just to buy you 10 seconds and a choice. A lot of survival is 10 seconds and a choice. I walked them to the door. "I will not sign tonight," I said, evenly. "If there's a care plan in my future, I'll write it with my doctor. If there's a loan, I will not be collateral." Sienna's mouth smiled while her eyes filed charges. "Then I hope you're ready to lose more than a house," she said, "because Ethan's past is searchable." Ethan flinched a second time, smaller, and I saw it. Shame wearing his face like a borrowed suit. "We'll be in touch," I said, and closed the door softly so the lilies didn't jump. I didn't cry, not for lack of feeling. Sorrow had already had its innings that morning. Instead, I made a list. Tomorrow, call Caleb Knox, private investigator recommended by the hospice nurse who has seen every flavor of human. Ask about dates, posts, travel, money. Ask about Victor. Find the paper clips. Put the pen where Ethan can't see it. Set the chain before bed. Sleep before yes. When the house settled, it did so like an old dog choosing cool tile. I stood at the window and watched their taillights fade. Ethan was driving too carefully for a man without a problem. Or too carefully because he had one. Sienna's silhouette in the passenger seat flickered with the light of her phone. She was typing, which meant tomorrow had already started on her side of the glass. I rinsed the 3 untouched glasses. The water ran like a sermon about patience. In the hallway, the calendar waited for my hand. I added 3 words to the margin because prevention counts as prayer. Check the math. Then I pulled the chain and let it lay in its groove with that soft, competent slide that says, "A door can love you without making a speech." Morning came in with a plain face and good posture. I brewed coffee the way nurses recommend, strong enough to carry a decision, and dialed the number the hospice nurse had written on a sticky note, Caleb Knox. He answered on the second ring with a voice that sounded like a door that closes properly. I gave him the short version, Ultimatum, care home brochure, a name that fell out of Sienna's mouth like a dropped coin. Victor, I said. Possibly a broker. Possibly a habit. Caleb didn't grunt or cluck. Professionals don't add punctuation to your fear. I'll be there at 11, he said. Don't straighten the house for me. Leave it as true. At 10:58, he knocked 3 times, politely. Same rhythm as the hospice nurse used before she entered rooms that hurt. He wore a gray sweater that didn't apologize for being warm. And he carried a notebook with a cover like old leather and the patience of a dog that doesn't bark. The cat sniffed his shoe and, uncharacteristically, approved. She has higher standards than most committees. I'm sorry for your loss, Caleb said, in a tone that had met grief before. He let the words have a chair and then sat down next to them. I laid out last night's pieces. Sienna's pre-cooked plan, Ethan's flinch, the name Victor, and the itch that the timeline on her pregnancy posts didn't match the belly that moved as if it had seniority. Caleb wrote in tidy lines. We start with calendars, not feelings, he said. Give me the month your husband fell, the hospice weeks, the funeral, and every date Sienna posted milestones. I pulled the wall calendar down and we placed it on the table like a map that didn't know it had been drafted for a battle. He drew dots and bridges. We'll check the metadata on her photos, he said. People lie, phones don't, unless asked. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Almost every photo on your phone carries EXIF data. Tiny tags that tattle on when and sometimes where the picture happened. You can strip them, but most people don't. Vanity hates extra steps. I filed that under reasons the internet remains a witness you didn't know you invited. I made a folder labeled Dates Don't Add Up because naming a thing keeps it from wandering. Caleb nodded, approving. He is a man who loves nouns. What about Victor? I asked. We'll run brokers in a 30-mile radius for that first name, he said. But I'm betting it isn't a broker. Victor is the kind of name you whisper when you're practicing power. He set his pen down and met my eyes. You may hear things about your son you don't like. We'll keep him separate from your decisions. That's not cold. It's hygiene. Elder wisdom. Separate the problem from the person. Love the person with dinner and clean towels. Handle the problem with clocks and receipts. Both kinds of care keep you from drowning where you meant to swim. We began with the obvious. Caleb asked for permission to look at Sienna's public accounts. I handed him a list of handles I'd gathered by simply remembering the names she gave to brunch. He scrolled without judgment. There, he said, pointing at a caption, 28 weeks today, with a lemon emoji. Posted 8.5 weeks ago. He made a small note. And here, he added, 20 weeks. A shot of a sonogram next to a latte art heart, time-stamped months before my husband's hospice intake. Not criminal, he said, but math wants to be respected. He took screenshots that looked like postcards only lawyers enjoy. Light joke one, my printer, which has always enjoyed dramatics, decided to groan at the second page like it was printing a confession. I told it we were only doing receipts, and it behaved. We walked and talked the house. Caleb had me stand in doorways and tell him the last time each room felt like everyone inside it was telling the truth. The living room, before the diagnosis. The kitchen, this morning, when the coffee stopped acting like company and started acting like fuel. The hallway, last night, when Sienna said Victor because the sentence came too fast. That's where we'll tug, he said. Where sentences ran ahead of thought. Academic phrase of the day. Base rate neglect. The public argument that we ignore general statistics, how common a behavior really is, when a vivid story shows up. Translation. A curated pregnancy timeline feels convincing. Population math remains indifferent. Caleb's cure was simple. Collect boring facts until they outnumber the story that wants applause. By noon, he had a grocery list of next steps. Pull clinic visit logs. Not the medical chart, just front desk timestamps. Scrape property records for any recent bridge activity linked to Victor. Search for alternate names on Sienna's credit pulls, and loop in a friend who knows how to read bank statements without making enemies of commas. I'll bring back what's true, he said, standing. If you have to make a decision, it will be because the clock told you to, not because someone yelled "tonight" after he left. The house resumed its low, good noises. The fridge made ice like polite applause. The heater breathed out its small patience. I ate toast, salted to the corners because competence eats simple. The cat performed HR by inspecting the chair Caleb had occupied and approving the imprint. Light joke 2. She then sat on the folder labeled "Dates Don't Add Up," which I took as a union endorsement. At 2. The doorbell rang with the rhythm of someone who rehearsed. I checked the peephole. Sienna. Alone. Eyes bright. Phone visible like a badge. I left the chain on. The chain and I have a contract. I'm here to offer a softer landing, she said. Bridge loan. No drama. Who is Victor? I asked, evenly. Her smile didn't twitch. It rotated. Our broker, she said. You'll love him. I doubt I'm his demographic, I said. Porch rules, 10 minutes, water poured, everything in writing. I handed her a glass like a test of gravity. She took a sip and changed strategies. Ethan needs this to go smoothly, she said. I worry what pressure does to him. She let the sentence imply what she didn't want to own. If you care about him, you'll sign. I looked past her shoulder at a patch of sky that refused melodrama. I love my son enough to not let his future be collateral, I said. If there's something you think I should know, put it in an email to my investigator. The word made her blink. Investigator? Yes, I said. Adults write things down. The timer on my stove, set before I opened the door, beeped like a dignified goose at the 8-minute mark. Light joke 3. Sienna actually jumped. I apologized to the concept of decorum and removed the water glass with the same courtesy you extend to a salesman when you close the sample case. When she left, I wrote the porch minutes in my notebook as if a nurse were going to check them later. Who, what, words used, broker, bridge, worry, implication, Ethan, boundary stated, email only. Then I scanned the page to Caleb and tucked the original under a brass bird so the paper wouldn't wander when the cat did. By late afternoon, Caleb's first text arrived, short and useful, confirmed. Sienna listed as 32 weeks at clinic yesterday, earlier posts inconsistent with timeline. Second text, Victor Lang, private lender, not licensed mortgage broker, small office above a strip of boutiques, 2 filings for confession of judgment in neighboring county. Legal voodoo that lets a lender win fast if you default. Third text, Sienna's maiden name appears as authorized user on an account Ethan opened 2 years ago, transfers monthly to a side account. He added a sentence that did not audition for panic. This isn't about bad people. It's about bad systems they're standing inside. I breathed the way a person does who has a map and a sweater. I cooked eggs for dinner because eggs forgive distraction. I taped a new card inside the cupboard. Tomorrow, clinic front desk for date confirmation. County clerk for Victor filings. Talk to Ethan alone. Without threats in the room. Sleep before confrontations. Write questions on paper and bring a pen that doesn't leak. The night lowered itself without an argument. I stood at the window and watched Porchlight make a small argument for staying. The calendar on the wall had 3 new marks. Call, check, ask, under the margin. I wrote, love the person, interrogate the story. Then I pulled the chain into its groove and let its soft, competent slide be the last sentence in a day that had already written too many. The clinic lobby smelled like hand gel and laminated encouragement. I asked for date-only verification of Sienna's prenatal visits, no health details, just check-ins, and slid across my driver's license with the quiet authority of a woman who has learned that paper is a type of flashlight. The receptionist, ponytail sincere, clicked keys, and printed a narrow strip of truth. Timestamps that didn't care about captions. 8 days ago, 32 weeks. 12 weeks before that, 20. The math stood up straight. Outside. The morning had the decency to be ordinary. I texted a photo of the printout to Caleb. His bubbles appeared. Matches are scrape. Keep that in your front pocket like peppermints. I folded the paper once, twice, and tucked it beside a literal peppermint. Because rituals help courage remember its shoes. The county clerk's office lived inside a courthouse that did not feel compelled to impress. A woman behind glass greeted me with the friendliness of a person who has seen every plot twist and respects none of them. I asked about filings tied to a private lender named Victor Lang. She slid a terminal toward me, nails practical, and said, "Spell it all. We're librarians with handcuffs here." We found 2 confession of judgment actions. Fastlane lawsuits waiting with pens uncapped. The defendants had signed papers that let Victor win before the argument even put on shoes. I wrote the docket numbers in my tidy hand and paid for stamped copies with cash that felt like punctuation. Academic phrase of the day. Confession of judgment. The public and controversial legal device where a borrower pre-authorizes a creditor to enter judgment against them if they default. It's sold as efficiency. But it can become a trapdoor under people who think they're stepping on a bridge. I sent Caleb a photo of the dockets. He replied, "That's our Victor. He lends speed, collects leverage. Watch for him to offer help that costs you your steering wheel." Elder wisdom, any plan that requires you to stop reading fine print isn't a plan, it's a vacuum. On the way home, the florist's door chimed that small bell I associate with honest receipts. I bought 1 sprig of rosemary for bravery and, because the budget allowed, 3 freesias, the color of quiet. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Thermal receipts fade over time because the dye sits in the paper and darkens with heat if you want a record to last. Scan it or photocopy to ink. Memory needs backups. I made tea that smelled like old stories and wrote questions for Ethan on a card I would not weaponize. When did the debt start? How much? Who knows? Why Sienna's timeline performative? Who is Victor to you? A cat-sized silence settled on the kitchen chair. The cat approved the agenda by doing nothing, which is management at its best. Ethan arrived at 2 with the face people put on when they've chosen honesty and are hoping the room cooperates. We sat at the table where grief had learned its elbows, and I slid water toward him like a truce. "This is just us," I said. "No threats in the room." He nodded. "I've made unbrilliant choices," he began. And I placed my palm flat to keep him from apologizing for the entire weather system. He told me about the slips, online sports bets that didn't feel like betting, then credit cards Sienna could optimize, then an opportunity introduced by Victor, who wore tailoring and said the word bridge the way a magician says now. "I owe more than I can carry," Ethan said, eyes learning the floor. "Sienna says the house is a solution. She says you won't need stairs soon." The sentence tried to be a shield and ended up a bruise. I pushed the clinic timestamp across the table. "She's at 32 weeks, not 28, I said. "Her captions were, 'for engagement,'" he finished. The word hating itself. I slid the docket copies next. "Victor files these when he's done playing nice," I said. "He wins before you get to speak," Ethan read, lips moving like a child strengthening a new muscle. Then blew out a breath that sounded like a bad lock giving up. "I thought Sienna loved me," he said. "Not as defense, but as a small funeral." "Maybe she loves the part of you that can be leveraged," I answered, and hated how true that could be. Light joke 1. The fridge chose that moment to rattle off an avalanche of ice like a comedian bombing a set. We both ignored it with professional grace. He told me about Sienna's broker lunches with Victor, how his hand had hovered over hers as if light were a leash. He told me about the ultimatum at my door, rehearsed in a car outside so the script wouldn't wobble. She said if I didn't help, she'd make sure everyone knew about the debt, he said. She'd ruin me. I wanted to hold his fear like a child. Instead, I held to the card with questions. "We'll fix the money," I said. "Not in a movie way, in an envelopes and phone calls way," he nodded. Relief and shame making space at the same time. We called Caleb on speaker. He kept his words clean. "Ethan, I need access to your statements," he said. "I'm not your priest, and I won't be your judge. I will be your map." Ethan read card numbers with the steadiness of someone at triage naming wounds. Caleb hummed once, a sound my nervous system has started to translate as, "We can work with this," and said he'd meet us at 5 with a stack of boring that saves lives. Light joke 2, my printer, sensing a chance to redeem itself, produced 3 clean copies without groaning. I promised it a dusting as positive reinforcement. At 4, the doorbell did its polite chime. I checked the peephole. Sienna. Alone. I left the chain on. The chain respects plot. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," she said, in the tone of someone auditioning for neutral. "Let me show you the math." She waved her phone. "No phones," I said. "Email to my investigator." She laughed lightly, like Mercy had RSVP'd yes. "You've made this adversarial," she said. "I made it accountable," I replied. Big difference. Her eyes slid toward the hallway where the photos live. "Do you want to be alone?" she asked. "Because that's where this goes." "I want to be exact," I said. "And alone isn't the same as not in debt to people who like signatures more than sunlight." The cat yawned theatrically from the console table. Light joke 3. Sienna flinched at the sudden feline judgment. I apologized to the concept of decorum and handed her a printed copy of the porch rules. Like a restaurant hands you a menu, it's memorized. She tried one last door. We could do a video together, tell our story before others tell it for us. Academic phrase of the day earned a sequel, I said. Reputational cascade. People copy what they think others think. I'll stick with dockets and dates. The stove timer chimed 10 minutes exactly. The goose knows his cues. "Your time's up," I added. She smiled minus warmth. "You'll regret choosing a paper trail over family," she said. "We'll see," I replied, and closed the door gently so the lilies wouldn't resent noise they didn't make. At 5. Caleb arrived in the quiet work sweater my life now trusts and laid out a grid on the table. Debts, dates, amounts, entities. The small teeth of automatic payments. He had printed Victor's filings and circled key language. Power of attorney in the fine print. Confession clauses disguised as dispute resolution. He added a list of steps with verbs. Freeze. Notify. Restructure. Block. "No one signs anything without me reading it twice," he said. "Twice is an unpopular number in emergencies. We're going to make it popular again." We phoned a credit counselor who uses more calculators than adjectives. We listed assets that were not the house. We found 2 subscriptions hiding as apps designed to look like weather. Ethan watched the totals move as if a storm were admitting it could. In fact, end. "I can do meetings," he said, meaning AA, but saying it like letters that had cost him years. "Do them," I said. "Not as penance, as plumbing." Quirky fact, addendum. Those little metal notary embossers you see at clerk counters crimp the paper instead of inking it. The raised seal lasts through floods and photocopies. Some truths want teeth. Want elder wisdom. Second helping. When you're tempted to solve a problem with a single grand gesture, make 4 small calls instead. Bank. Counselor, clerk, friend. Momentum built from tiny, accurate things doesn't need a speech to stand up. By 8. We had a plan that didn't apologize for being unglamorous. Caleb would draft a letter to Victor refusing any contact and routing all noise through council. Ethan would attend a meeting and bring back the simple miracle of a chair he sat in on purpose. I would sleep before yes. Again. And again after that. Until the habit stuck. Before bed. I filed the clinic printout behind a brass bird, slid the clerk copies into a sleeve, and taped a card inside the cupboard. Tomorrow, call the broker board to report Victor's unlicensed advice. Meet Caleb at the cafe across from Sienna's favorite salon. Watch the door and the reflection. The house settled the way an old book knows how to close. The chain found its groove. The fridge refrained from applause. I let the quiet hold me like a receipt you don't have to contest. Caleb chose the cafe across from Sienna's favorite salon because the windows were excellent liars. Mirrors from inside. Telescopes from out. I arrived early with a notebook that had learned to breathe and ordered tea I didn't intend to finish. The barista wrote my name with a heart. I left it uncorrected. We sat by the side window where a ficus tried to be a confidant. Caleb placed his small camera on the saucer like extra sugar. "We're here to let the calendar show us a handhold," he said. "No improvising, no storming. Elder wisdom. When you suspect a truth will show itself. Build a chair for it and sit. Don't chase." At 10:07. Sienna appeared in the salon window across the street. Hair coiled in a towel like a crown that wasn't done yet. She checked her phone twice, glanced at her reflection, then at the door to the cafe as if the scene owed her timing. 10:12. A man in a fitted coat arrived, late 50s. The kind of grooming that believes in polished shoes the way some people believe in vitamins. Victor, I thought, without needing the caption. He opened the cafe door for her with a hand that hovered a fraction too long over her back. Caleb didn't look up. The camera made its small, approving click. They chose a table 2 over from ours. Proximity. Either arrogance or muscle memory. Victor placed his phone face down with the screen toward him. Habit of men who expect to be needed. Sienna set hers face up, brightness high. Performed a sigh that asked for a witness. Then leaned forward with her forearm on the table. Victor covered her wrist with his palm like a borrowed ring. "Only for a moment," he murmured. "Not for our benefit, but for the performance of restraint." Caleb adjusted the focus the way a person adjusts a collar, without apology. Light joke 1. The espresso machine chose that moment to hiss like an offended cat. Our barista whispered, "She's dramatic," and patted the steam wand as if it were a friend who overshares. I watched Sienna as if she were a bank statement. Columns and anomalies. She laughed at something that didn't sound like a joke, then pulled out a manila envelope, sliding a page to Victor with her nails fanned like a peacock. He scanned, tapped a spot with a pen he probably loved, and said, "Sign here, standard confession clause, just in case." Caleb's eyes didn't move. The camera did. "We have our bridge," Victor added, softer. "And the house across the street? It'll be yours faster if we don't invite the mother to the table." Sienna nodded, absorbing certainty like lotion. Academic phrase of the day. Confirmation bias. The public argument that we look for evidence that proves what we think and ignore what doesn't. The antidote is a disconfirming test. Sit still and let the world show you something you didn't plan on seeing. Today. Restraint did the heavy lifting. Caleb slid his notebook toward me. "Don't approach, collect timestamps, smile if they look." He was right. We needed paper, not theater. I took a sip of tea that had gone honest with cooling. The ficus supervised. 10:25, Sienna asked. "And Ethan?" Victor shrugged with the familiarity of a man who can afford indifference. "Men like him swim if they have to," he said. "If he doesn't, we have our confession. We win before he wets his hair." Caleb's pen made 3 dots, his version of profanity. I felt the old urge to stand and become a lecture instead. I added the time to my notes and circled it twice. Quirky fact. Sidebar, cafes pipe in a kind of sound called pink noise. Frequencies distributed so your brain can ignore chatter but stay alert enough to feel clever. It's why ideas arrive between sips. It's also why confessions think they're whispers when they're just pink. They stood, separated by 2 inches of propriety, and Sienna touched her towel crown like victory needed smoothing. Victor paid in cash, 3 bills and a coin that rolled, comic and defiant, under our table. Light joke. 2. I stopped it with my shoe like a goalie who'd been waiting all game for one decent shot. Caleb raised an eyebrow that said, "Assist," as they left. Sienna caught her reflection in the window. Not mine. She looked satisfied the way a drafted plan looks when it mistakes itself for the future. Caleb waited a full beat, then another. "Okay," he said, voice leveled. "Photos logged. Let's move to money." He opened his laptop and the cafe's quiet turned into a ledger. Transfers from Ethan's card to an account ending 7409, authorized user in Sienna's maiden name, he narrated. Another account, signature only, receives monthly from a private lender holding company with Victor's address. We'll subpoena when we can, for now. We map. We walked the long block to a bank where Caleb knew a manager who liked lending to boring people. Over a courteous conversation about fraud alerts and ensuring family safety. We learned exactly what we expected, a pattern of small, regular siphons designed to feel ignorable, leading to one large drain. They always named them something soft, the manager said, scrolling. Bridge, cushion, liberty. He printed Ethan's last 3 statements at our request. "Tell your son to cancel anything labeled express or premium protection," he added. "Those are toll booths." Light joke 3. The printer at the bank, unlike mine, purred like a cat who had chosen one favorite person and decided it was me. I promised to be worthy by stapling straight. By afternoon, I had a folder that weighed like sanity. Caleb stopped us on the corner under a winter sun that gave without asking for applause. "We're ready," he said. "Not to fight, to show. Tonight." We put the paper on the table and let the clock do the talking. I nodded. "Family meeting?" "Yes," he said, "but with exits, a recorder, and rules you read out loud like fire instructions." Back home, I wrote the script I would not deviate from. We meet in the dining room at 7. Phones face down, 1 recorder on. I will read the porch rules in miniature. 10 minutes per turn. Water poured. Nouns preferred. I will present timestamps, clinic, cafe, filings, Victor, transfers. Ask Ethan, do you want help that is paperwork and meetings? Ask Sienna, who is Victor to you? Close with conditions. No deed changes. No loans. No confessions. All communication in writing to Caleb. I said 3 glasses. 3 pens that do not leak. And 1 small plate of crackers so the blood sugar of the room wouldn't tank. I put the cat in the bedroom because she cannot be trusted to remain nonverbal during poor arguments. At 6:55, Ethan arrived. Jacket a shade less slumped than last time. At 6:59, Sienna came with hair that had finished being important and cheeks that looked camera ready. I read the rules. The recorder blinked its little red eye. "We're not in court," Sienna said, as if the absence of a judge erased gravity. "We are," I said calmly, "in a house where rules are on paper." I began with the clinic timestamps. 32 weeks, I read, not 28, as posted 8.5 weeks prior. Sienna rolled her eyes like a teenager who believes boredom is violence. "Engagement," she muttered again. "And here," I continued, 2 filings by Victor Lang, whose cash bought coffee today at 10:12, while his hand covered yours at 10:13. I slid a photo across, hands, wrist, pen, not intimate, not innocent, just leverage doing chores. Ethan's face learned something it didn't want to know. Bridge loans are normal, Sienna said. Caleb, from the corner, spoke for the first time. Confession clauses are not normal in consumer deals, he said. They are doors that lock from only one side. He placed the statements in a row. Ethan's transfers. Sienna's maiden name account. The holding company trickle. We don't need to believe anything, he added. The numbers carry their own testimony. Ethan turned to Sienna with a voice I hadn't heard since he was clean-shaven for junior prom. Why Victor? He asked. Not an accusation, a request for nouns. She looked at me instead of him. Because somebody in this family does things, she said. You two ring hands. Victor moves. There it was, her thesis. I let it sit on the plate like a cracker nobody wanted. Conditions, I said, because arguments need endings. There will be no deed transfers, no loans involving this address, no more express or premium protection. All money goes boring by sunrise. Ethan, you will meet the counselor tomorrow and bring back a receipt that proves a chair held you. Sienna, you will email any proposal to Caleb, no more doorsteps with scripts. She smiled like a photographer who's already chosen the filter. Or nothing, I said. This isn't a threat, it's a schedule. I stood because the chair had done its part. The door is that way. The porch has rules. The chain is friendly to caution. The house is not for sale to adjectives. We ended without slamming anything. Ethan stayed behind to breathe like a person who has found a rung. Sienna left in a rush that tried to be choreography and was only velocity when the latch said its syllable. The recorder stopped blinking. Caleb packed the paper without triumph. We'll expect noise, he said. Let it bounce off the nouns. Before sleep. I placed the cafe photos under a brass bird, the bank prints in a sleeve, and my script back in the notebook where my hand knows to look. The house made its modest choir. Click, slide, hush, and the night agreed to be boring, which is the most powerful kind of peace. I set tomorrow's card, call lender board, send Victor letter, counselor at noon, buy more paper clips. I turned off the lamp and let darkness do what it does when you've built it a good job, hold without boasting. Morning arrived with the hush of a library just before opening, carpet remembering footsteps, heater breathing like a kindly animal. I made coffee that could carry a plan and laid the night's artifacts on the table. Clinic timestamps, Victor's filings, the cafe photos, Ethan's statements with the siphons circled in patient ink. Caleb texted, board complaints drafted, sign when ready. The cat patrolled the perimeter of the paper like a small security guard who prefers nouns. Elder wisdom, when a storm has finally said its piece. Answer with a schedule, not a speech. A schedule is a doorway you can walk through without performance. Every single day. At 9 sharp, we did the unglamorous good. Caleb read each letter aloud once. State lender board about Victor's advice. County DA, intake regarding confession clauses sold as consumer product. Bank fraud unit about the premium protection that protected exactly nothing. And I signed with a pen that doesn't spill. He FedExed the physical sets because some offices respect a stamp more than an upload. Then he emailed the same packets because some offices only believe in attachments. Redundancy is not paranoia, he said. It's insurance for truth. Ethan showed at 10 in yesterday's jacket, cleaner around the eyes. He brought receipts like a boy bringing report cards. Credit counselor intake at noon. Support group meeting at 6. Auto cancel on 3 express services that specialized in extracting $10 from Hope. He didn't ask for applause. He asked where to put the papers. I slid a folder across labeled boring that saves lives. He exhaled into it like a sailor finally believing in docks. The doorbell tried out its better manners. Peephole, Sienna's mother, coral lipstick, pearls that had opinions. I kept the chain on. The chain and I sign each other's timesheets now. Nora, she said, could we speak woman to woman? Things have escalated. Lawyers are unnecessary ice. I poured water through the gap because hydration is universal law. We're speaking calendar to calendar, I said. 10 minutes. Water poured, nouns only. She attempted diplomacy as choreography. Sienna is hormonal. Victor is persuasive. The house is large. Wouldn't you prefer a suite with amenities? I prefer a home where threats don't pick my furniture, I answered. She tried the soft menace. People talk. And I offered the soft weather. Orders file. Clocks run. The stove timer, our dignified goose, honked at exactly 10. Light joke 1. She jumped like decorum had tugged her hem. I apologized to etiquette and closed with a thank you that meant, please leave. We ate toast with jam because victory should be small enough to chew. Caleb's phone lit with a reply from the lender board. Received, investigator assigned, quiet sentences that carry weight. He nodded once, his version of confetti. Academic phrase of the day, commitment device. The public argument that you deliberately limit your future choices to help your later self keep promises. Think, automatic savings, gym buddy, blocking numbers. Our house has 3, porch rules taped where hands already go. Sleep before yes, written on the cupboard, and no deed talk, filed with counsel. They're not romantic, they work. Just before noon, Ethan headed to the counselor. I watched him cross the street like a person who had decided to belong to gravity again. Light joke 2. The fridge celebrated by producing exactly 3 ice cubes with theatrical restraint. I told it the new tone suited it. Caleb and I took the folder to the bank manager who likes lending to boring people. We asked for a fraud and fence package, alerts on any hard pulls, text pings if accounts meet private lenders. The manager, Ty with tiny sailboats, added a couple of passwords so human beings would have to notice before money moved. Bridges are for rivers, he said, tapping a key, not for families, on the sidewalk outside. Caleb paused in that way he does when he's about to say something unfun but necessary. Sienna will try a reputational push, he said. She'll say you're unstable. That grief is driving you to paranoia. Do not chase her narrative. Repeat the nouns, dates, filings, transfers, and if she shows up with content, close the door before the camera turns red. I nodded. Our house is a no-producer zone. Quirky fact. Sidebar. The common gem paperclip, the double oval you're picturing, was never patented in its exact form, but it became the world's default anyway, during World War II. Norwegians wore paperclips as a quiet protest symbol, a small bent wire said. We hold together. I put one on the cafe photo because I like my metaphors cheap and useful. Afternoon tilted toward the kind of light that flatters paperwork. Ethan returned with a folded brochure and eyes that had been with truth for an hour. She asked me to list the exact lies I tell myself before a bet, he said. It turns out I have favorites. He set the list down as if it were warm. We'll swap them for rules, I said. Rules are sentences that consent to be repeated. We made 3. No tonight decisions, no bridge anything. No express fees that explain themselves like heroes. He copied them on a card, pocketed the card, and looked taller by a 1/4 inch. At 3. The phone tried to audition for a show we don't produce. The caller ID said private. The voicemail said Victor. His voice carried that soft sandpaper of men who think fairness is a flavor. Nora, he purred. I help families get through bottlenecks. You're holding up progress. Sign the temporary deed transfer. Let me carry the load. He paused for consent that wasn't coming. If you refuse, my client will have to be honest about your son's issues. I handed the phone to Caleb, who saved the message to a file labeled Leverage, Audio. Extortion adjacent, he said. Noted. Light joke 3, the cat, who disdains all men equally. batted the phone with one velvet paw, and then sat on the folder like a courthouse statue. We promoted her to head of optics. At 4. Sienna posted a photo of a latte with the caption, "Choosing peace," which is what people type when the judge they fear hasn't yet answered. Comments split into bouquets and knives. 2 steady friends asked, "Dates? Names?" The thread cooled. Priscilla from town, of brunch fame, messaged me privately. "If you need a retraction later, I now understand how to write one." I sent her the lemon bar recipe annotated, "Cut smaller than pride." Ethan and I walked the block at dusk because motion is medicine. He told me the counselor's office smelled like peppermint and dust and chairs that had learned to keep secrets without turning into accomplices. "I can do this," he said. "Not as penance, as plumbing." I liked the word in his mouth. It meant function instead of fireworks. We returned to find Caleb in the living room with 2 envelopes and a calm that organizes rooms. First, a response from the DA. They'd like to talk about Victor's consumer activities, he said. Second, a note from a clinic administrator. "Your timestamps are accurate." He placed both on the table like pieces of a puzzle that finally admit they were part of the same picture. "Tomorrow," he added, "we'll invite Sienna to bring counsel to a clean room conversation. No phones, just paper. If she declines, we'll assume the dignity of silence until the state knocks on Victor's door." I made soup because soup reminds the house it's on our side. Beans, lemon, bread that knows how to mind crumbs. The lamp gave it soft green, the kind that falls only where work is and lets the edges rest. We ate without narrating the day like heroes, which felt like progress. Before bed, I wrote a card for the cupboard. Thursday plan: bank, confirm alerts, call, DA, intake at 10. Invite, clean room meet, Caleb, CC. Ethan, meeting at 6, bring chair receipt. House, no filming, no tonight, no adjectives. Me, tea, walk, sleep before yes. I tucked it behind the porch rules because that's where hands already go. Then I stood at the window, let the street lights draw their breath, and listened while the house sang its small choir, click, slide, hush. The sound of a sentence that has stopped trying to be a novel and is content to be true. When I finally lay down, I said the quietest prayer I know. Let the paper hold. Paper doesn't hate. It doesn't charm. It doesn't forget. It just remembers what we asked it to. The chain found its groove. The fridge kept its commentary to an indoor voice. Outside. Winter practiced not being cruel. Inside. The schedule tucked me in like a competent nurse. Tomorrow had already made itself useful by promising to arrive on time. Thursday arrived like a clipboard, flat, useful, not here for applause. I brewed coffee strong enough to carry a conversation with a prosecutor and set the day's verbs where my hands already go. Call DA, confirm bank alerts, send the clean room invite. Lunch that chews easily. Walk, sleep before yes. The house did its small, reassuring choir, latch clicking its accurate syllable, lamp giving its gentle tisk. Heater breathing like a diligent animal. The cat inspected the folder labeled "boring that saves lives" and approved with a blink, which in her language is both a signature and a hug. At 10 on the dot, I spoke with an assistant DA whose voice had ballast. Caleb conferenced in, and we kept it nouns. Private lender Victor Lang using confession of judgment boilerplate in consumer context, he said. 2 dockets attached. We also have an audio message that leans on extortion. The ADA asked for dates, not adjectives. We gave them dates. She asked for copies, not opinions. We sent copies. Elder wisdom. When telling the truth to people who can move levers. Aim for the sound of a good hinge, quiet, aligned, no squeak. By 11. The bank alerts were live. Fraud and fence set to ping if anything tried to sprint. At 11:15, I sent Sienna and Ethan the invite Caleb drafted. Clean room conversation at 3 p.m. No phones. 1 recorder. Council welcome. Paper only. 10 minutes later, a reply from Sienna's Gmail. We decline. We prefer to resolve privately. Caleb typed back. This is private. Decline noted. 5 minutes after that, Victor left a voicemail warm as sandpaper. Meet me without the babysitter. Nora, I can make your troubles light. I saved the file under leverage, audio, and fed the cat. We both prefer our predators plainly labeled. Academic phrase of the day. Cognitive load. The public argument that overloaded brains make poor decisions. Stress steals working memory and impulse control. The cure isn't heroics. It's external scaffolding, checklists, timers, rules on cupboard doors, boring calendars that carry weight when your mind is out of breath. Caleb arrived in the early afternoon in the quiet work sweater my nervous system now trusts. He set a slim, unremarkable binder on the table like a priest sets down a book he believes in. 2 more fines, he said. First, a UCC-1 financing statement Victor filed last month listing household fixtures as collateral, overbroad and ugly. Second, an old alias tied to Sienna, Aria Monroe. 2 prior investigations for undue influence romance fraud. 1 closed, 1 transferred. He slid the printouts forward without flourish. We're not going to litigate her biography, he added, but we will speak the dates out loud. Light joke 1, my printer. Still in a redemption arc, purred through 15 pages without a groan, I told it I was proud of its new quiet core persona. And it whirred like a small appliance that's joined a meditation app. At 2. Ethan texted a photo of a folding chair in a church basement, time-stamped, location tagged, caption simply, 6 p.m., meeting reserved. A chair never looked more heroic. I breathed like a person who understood plumbing over poetry. At 2:30, Sienna's mother appeared at the door in a coral jacket the exact shade of a soft threat. I left the chain on because the chain and I are co-authors now. We're not attending your tribunal, she announced. It's distasteful to involve outsiders. We're involving paper, I said. It doesn't gossip. I poured water through the gap. She declined as if hydration might be an admission. You're tearing a family, she tried. Victor is not invited to finish sentences on my porch, I replied. The stove timer, our dignified goose, honked at minute 10. Light joke 2. She jumped, then pretended she hadn't. I apologized to etiquette and wrote porch minutes while syllables were still warm. 3 o'clock. Our clean room stayed empty of Sienna and full of order. Caleb and I read the record aloud to each other anyway. Because truth deserves rehearsal. Clinic timestamps, bank siphons, Victor's filings, voicemail language, the bridge, euphemisms, Ethan's schedule of meetings. We placed Ethan's chair receipt in a clear sleeve and labeled it Evidence of New Habit. We proceed without spectacle, Caleb said. Noise is a resource predators use. We keep them hungry. Quirky fact. Sidebar, the humble binder clip, 2 steel loops and a black triangular jaw, was invented in 1910 by Louis Baltzley to help his writer father keep manuscripts tidy. Its spring steel has a memory. It opens, holds, and releases without losing its grip. I like tools that admit they're temporary and still do their job perfectly. At 3:15, the doorbell chimed. Peephole, Sienna, alone, phone in hand, a camera app already hungry. I kept the chain on. Rules are hospitality for tense people. Last chance to avoid humiliation, she smiled. Admit you're overwhelmed. Sign the house. Behind her, a car idled at a polite distance. Victor at the wheel. Sunglasses reflecting my porch like a mirror that forgot how to tell the truth. Caleb stepped into view, voice even. Put the phone away. All proposals go to council. We have nothing else for you. Sienna glanced down the walk as if waiting for stage direction. Victor lifted a hand, pivot palmed. The internationally recognized sign for rapid. She left a final line on the stoop. You'll regret choosing paper over family, and moved toward the idling car. I closed the door gently so the lilies, now dried and dignified, wouldn't resent noise they didn't cause. By 4, the ADA had emailed back, "We'll be in touch for sworn statements. Please preserve all messages and recordings." Caleb smiled the way ocean buoys smile, small, steadfast. "The system is awake," he said. "Now we keep cooking dinner and buying stamps." Ethan arrived at 5, early for his 6 o'clock chair. He carried a small bag of groceries like a white flag that had learned to be a meal. "I figured we could eat before I go," he said. We made quick beans, garlic loud enough to discourage self-pity, lemon late, bread that minded crumbs. He set his phone face down without prompting. I set 2 napkins straight because straight is a spell. He asked the question people ask when the story loses its heat. "What if I'm the reason this happened?" "You're the reason it stops," I said. "That's enough for this evening." He nodded and took the first calm bite I'd seen in weeks. Light joke 3. The fridge celebrated by producing exactly 2 ice cubes with modesty. We told it the new tone suited it and promoted it to assistant for climate. He left for the meeting with his shoulders paying attention. I washed the 2 plates like evidence that pays rent. Caleb, packing, said. "Tomorrow, lender board interview at 9, DA at 2. I'll sit next to you and make sure our adjectives take the day off." "They're terrible workers anyway," I said. He grinned. "Your nouns got races." Evening practiced being gentle. I mailed a copy of the Victor letter certified, slid the receipt under a brass bird so the paper wouldn't wander, and watered the rosemary at the step so the night would remember sun. The community board coughed up one more rumor. 2 steady replies arrived like metronomes, dates and names, and the thread went quiet without me stepping in. I practiced not being the main character, an underrated skill. Before bed, I wrote a new card for the cupboard. Friday plan, 9 a.m., lender board interview. Bring Victor filings, play voicemail. 2 p.m., DA, call, timestamps, photos, transfers. Ethan, text when seated at meeting, chair photo counts. Porch, chain on, water poured, 10-minute limit, no filming. Me, T, walk. Pronounce my own name correctly when asked. House, no tonight, no bridge, no miracles, just receipts. I taped it where hands already go. The lamp clicked like a period that knows where it belongs. The latch said, "It's single." Decent word. The cat settled on the folder like a punctuation mark, taking a nap. Academic phrase of the day earned a second whisper on the pillow. Cognitive load. When heavy emotion narrows the hallway of your mind. Widen it with tools outside your skull, so I widened mine. Cards on cupboards. Paper under birds. Schedules that don't care about panic. The phone buzzed once at 6:03. Ethan's chair. A circle of sneakers. A coffee urn. No caption. I wrote the word, seated in my notebook, and let it count as grace. Outside. Winter remembered how not to be cruel. Inside. The house held my breath like a promise that doesn't audition. I turned off the lamp and let the room close the way good sentences do. Without wobble. On time. In a key that let sleep trust it. Friday showed up like a legal pad. Yellow. Lined. Asking only for ink. I set the kettle. Straightened the stack labeled boring that saves lives. And tucked the Victor voicemail onto a little USB drive that glowed a modest blue. The house kept its choir, latch with its accurate syllable, lamp with its gentle tisk, heater breathing like a reliable animal. I slipped a peppermint in my pocket because sweetness that waits is a small kind of courage. At 9 sharp. The lender board investigator, Miss Patel, joined our video call. Her face was the kind that believes in dates more than drama. Caleb handled the openings. I supplied nouns. We laid out the filings, the UCC clause naming household fixtures, the cafe timestamps, and Victor's voicemail with the sandpaper tone. Miss Patel asked for copies, not adjectives. She took notes the way a metronome keeps trust. "You've done the pre-work," she said. "We'll evaluate licensing, unfair practices, and the confession of judgment use. If we need sworn statements, you'll hear from counsel." Her last line felt like ballast. Document everything and continue declining contact. We signed off to the sound of coffee cooling into honesty. Elder wisdom. If a storm hands you a microphone, put it down and pick up a calendar. Schedules are umbrellas that don't care about applause. By 10. The bank pinged, alert testing successful, all hard pull notifications live. At 10:30. Ethan texted a photo of a folded chair, time-stamped for tonight. With a single word, seated. The chair has become our family's new flag. Light joke 1. The fridge honored the news by producing a dignified pair of ice cubes and then minding its business. We congratulated it for its restraint. At 11. A courier slid a manila envelope under the door with the seriousness of an organ donor. Victor's letterhead, lines of oil. "Final opportunity," he wrote, "to execute a temporary deed for liquidity." Caleb scanned it once, twice, then smiled the way buoys smile, upright, unbothered. "Shiny language over rusted bolts," he said, and saved it under ammunition, paper. I wrote porch minutes even though no porch was involved. Habit is a guardrail you don't see until your tires find it. Academic phrase of the day. Signaling theory. The public argument that people send costly signals to prove intent or quality. Predators counterfeit signals with borrowed gloss, expensive letterhead, polished shoes, phrases like bridge liquidity. The antidote is to ask. What did it cost them to send this? With Victor, the answer was toner. Noon became soup because noon is good at that. Beans, lemon at the end. Bread that respects crumbs. Caleb reviewed the 2:00 checklist for the DA. Clinic timestamps, bank transfers into the maiden name account, UCC filing, voicemail, and the cafe photos labeled with precise times. He slid a pen to me that never leaks, his superstition. "No embroidery," he said. "Nouns only." "Mercy after nouns," I answered, and we clinked mugs like small bells. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Legal pads have a 1¼ inch left margin called a downline, supposedly to give lawyers a space for notes or to separate thought from argument. I like a paper that designs itself around the idea that the first draft won't be the last. At 1:40, the doorbell pressed its decency. Peephole. Not Sienna, not her mother. A courier again, this time from an attorney with a last name that belongs on brass. "Cease and desist regarding defamation of Miss Sienna Hart," it said, while listing no actual statements to cease. Caleb's eyebrows made their quiet case for laughter. "Template meant to scare," he said. "We will reply with, show the quote. Show the lie." Light joke 2. The cat pawed the envelope like a magician's volunteer, then sat on it. Which is what she does with all props she disapproves of. 2:00. The ADA dialed in with a colleague whose haircut said capacity. We played the voicemail. We read the dates. We showed the pictures where hands hover and pens indicate confession lines like friendly traps. "Keep declining contact," the ADA said. "If approached in person again, ask them to leave and call us. We'll also be contacting Mr. Lang." Her partner added, "If you receive a summons, send it over before you blink." I blinked for practice, then breathed. At 3. I walked to the blue mailbox with 2 certified letters, one to the lender board with our fresh exhibits, one to the DA with a thumb drive. The slot accepted them with the weary dignity of a civil servant, on maple. The florist had 3 freesias, which I bought under the condition I sit while smelling them. I sat, and for a minute let my grief do its quiet work without explaining itself to anyone. Back home, the porch card watched over an uneventful hour. Sienna didn't appear. Victor didn't idle. A neighbor stopped to report that the terrier's audit found the gate click still compliant. The dog wore a new sweater patterned like a bar graph. Light joke 3, I saluted the CFO of small dogs, and he granted us a tax credit in the form of 1 respectful tail wag. Ethan arrived early for his meeting, dressed in the uniform of men who intend to show up. Jacket. Silence. Phone face down. He updated me on the cancellations. Express. Premium. Priority. A thesaurus for siphons. I made a list of lies I tell myself, he said, producing a card. It's longer than I wanted, shorter than I feared. We put the card in a sleeve labeled Truth in Progress. How are you sleeping? I asked. Like a man with a folding chair, not a sword, he said. That sounded exactly right. At 5. Caleb shared one more find, a line in Sienna's maiden name account labeled Consult VL, small, regular, designed to look ignorable. They like toll booth, he said. 10 here, 20 there, 40 later. We added it to the map. When this ends, I said, it won't feel like fireworks. It'll feel like not tripping, he agreed. The sun, such as it was, tilted toward polite. I laid out the weekend card. Saturday, walk, beans, call Aunt May, check Rosemary. Sunday, letters to myself with dates. Small train to the sea next week, if budget allows, out and back. In the literacy room, I would tell Maritza and Joel how boundaries and banisters still hold when the hallway fills with noise. I would bring gold stars because adults deserve procedural justice that glitters a little. At 6. Ethan texted the now familiar photo, rows of chairs, sneakers, the coffee urn, no caption. I wrote, seated 2, beside yesterday's seated 1 in my notebook and drew a line between them like sleepers on a railway map. The phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. It was Priscilla from town, newly reformed. If anyone floats rumors, I'll ask for documents, she said. It turns out dates and names is the only cocktail I trust. I thanked her and sent the lemon bar recipe again as a liturgy. She replied, cut smaller than pride. And I believed she meant it. Evening decided to be gentle. I paid the small water bill online and moved the email to a folder called Tide Paid. I set the freesias by the banister portrait, which, under the banker's lamp, has learned how not to perform. I watered the rosemary at the step so it would remember the sun on my behalf. The cat inspected the porch from the safe side of the screen and accepted the neighborhood's report. Before bed, I wrote a card and taped it where hands already go. Weekend rules. No tonight. No bridge. Mercy after nouns. Porch, chain on, water poured, timer visible. Ethan, chair, then call. Me, walk. Soup, read 2 pages on loud days, 3 on quiet. Then I did the small things that make sleep trust me. Ironed pillowcases so choices feel smooth. Stacked the folders perpendicular so paper knows it belongs. Slid the USB back into its dish beside the brass bird so evidence won't wander. The lamp clicked like a period that loves its job. The latch said its single decent word. The heater exhaled. I lay down and let the day fold itself. Somewhere in the dark, a prosecutor adjusted a file, a board investigator sharpened a sentence. A lender considered the cost of borrowed gloss, and my son sat in a circle of chairs with strangers who planned to become less strange by naming what almost ate them. We are not cured. We are scheduled. And that is enough to let the house hold me, like a binding that won't crack. Saturday opened like a page that had already agreed to behave. I brewed coffee that knew how to carry a plan and checked the weekend card I'd taped where hands already go. No tonight. No bridge. Mercy after nouns. The house answered with its small choir, latch saying its accurate syllable, lamp giving its gentle tisk, heater breathing like a reliable animal that likes being useful. Rosemary at the back step lifted a ribbon of scent like a quiet flag. I set beans to simmer and lined the table with our 3 dependable stacks: bank, board, DA. Because progress in this house wears file tabs. At 9. Miss Patel from the lender board called back sooner than hope usually allows. Her voice had ballast and weekend politeness. "We've opened a formal inquiry," she said. Preliminary findings. Mr. Lang is not licensed to give consumer advice, yet appears to be structuring deals that walk like consumer loans. We'll interview him midweek. She asked for one more item, the envelope from yesterday with his shiny letterhead. "Signaling matters," she said. "Gloss that hides teeth is part of the pattern. Elder wisdom. When you don't know which detail will matter, keep them all and label them cleanly. Truth likes rooms with good closets." I printed a copy because certain offices trust paper that smells like heat. Light joke 1. The printer. In its redemption arc, purred out perfect margins and then congratulated itself with a very small beep. I told it modesty is fashionable and it dimmed like an appliance attending therapy. By 10. Ethan texted a photo of a coffee urn and a circle of chairs, seated, 3, written beneath in his own hand. He added, "They asked me to list the lies I tell myself before a bet. It felt like unpacking a suitcase I didn't pack." I wrote back, "Fold each one and put it on a shelf. We'll decide later what gets donated." Academic phrase of the day: pre-commitment. The public argument that you limit your future choices on purpose because you don't trust your future impulse. You put locks on the cookie jar you bought. In practice, bank alerts. No express anything. Chair at 6, and a mother who answers the door with a timer and a glass of water, not a speech. At noon, the porch got its hour. A neighbor stopped by to report that the terrier's audit found the gate click still compliant. The dog wore a sweater patterned like a miniature line graph trending cautiously up. Light joke 2. I saluted the CFO of Small Dogs. He approved our budget with a single dignified tail wag. Back inside, Caleb arrived with a folder labeled Clean Room, Alternate. "If she won't bring counsel to us, we'll build a room she can't enter," he said. He drafted a notice routing all communications through him and the DA, plus a short declaration Ethan could sign affirming his plan. Counselor weekly. Chair nightly for 7 days. No large transactions without a cosigner. No contact with Victor. "This isn't punishment," Caleb said. "It's scaffolding." Ethan read the sentences like they were steps he could see. He signed, and the pen didn't leak, which felt like a cooperation between ink and luck. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Those green return receipt postcards you get with certified mail, PS Form 3811, are designed to be their own proof. Postal workers sign the card, it comes back to you. And the crease across its belly shows it did some traveling. Bureaucracy sometimes writes small poems on cardstock. I sent one attached to our Victor packet because tangible confirmation is a strong T. At 2. A new kind of weather rolled across the town's little internet. A post from Sienna tagged, "Choosing Gentleness, Soft Filter, Latte Art." In the caption, she wrote about older relatives overwhelmed by grief and outside manipulators. 2 steady commenters arrived right on schedule, dates and names, and the thread cooled by degrees. Priscilla from town slid me a screenshot privately. "If a rumor knocks, I'll ask it for ID." I replied with a lemon emoji and the words cut smaller than pride. And she sent back a photo of batter in a pan and a caption that simply said, "Practicing." The DA pinged at 3:30. An intake officer would schedule formal statements early next week. In the meantime, preserve all communications and decline all meetings not attended by counsel. We answered with the calmest sentence in the language. Received. Late afternoon. I walked the garden. The rosemary held its tiny suns under each needle, if I brushed it. Memory lifted. The beans on the stove murmured at a volume that makes courage plausible. I penciled a small list on an index card. Mulch next weekend. Freesia, if the florist's luck holds. Tighten the side gate hinge that thinks it's a soprano. Light joke 3. I told the hinge we only cast altos in this house. It creaked back a compromise. At 5. Ethan knocked the way a man does when he's trying not to wake a sleeping infant. Careful, hopeful, grateful for the excuse to be gentle. He brought another tiny receipt, auto-cancel confirmation for an express security pack, and a jar of grocery store olives, which is what a sober man buys when he wants to hand someone salt and not trouble. We ate beans with lemon and bread that minded crumbs. He told me he'd met a man at the meeting who carried a laminated card that said, Rule number 1, no urgency profit. I might laminate mine, Ethan said, and I thought of all the sentences we tried to live by that never got that durable. Caleb's phone buzzed with something sharp. He glanced, then tilted the screen. A text from an unknown number. Meet me without your babysitter. I can make your troubles light. V. Caleb saved it, then typed 3 words I have grown to trust. Documented, declined, forwarded. Evening arrived with its soft shoes. I took a walk to the blue mailbox with the certified envelope for the board. The slot accepted it with the same weary dignity I felt in my bones. At the florist. 3 freesias waited, the color of quiet intentions. Sit while you smell them, she reminded me. And I promised I would. Back home. The cat inspected the outgoing mail and then sat on the stack like a punctuation mark that had decided to work retail. We got one last knock at the door near sunset. Peephole. Sienna's mother again. This time without coral armor, carrying a pie wrapped in foil as if sweetness could launder threats. I left the chain on and poured water through the gap. No phones, I said before she could turn the pan into a camera. She tried a new angle. History. Sienna's father left when she was 7, she said. As if pain were a key she could wave at my lock. She doesn't trust slow processes. Slow processes make trustworthy things, I said. Ships, bread, marriages that last, and the kind of apologies that mean work. She held my eyes longer than decorum expects, then nodded without surrender. If it comes to court, she said, we'll say you're unstable. If it comes to court, I replied. We'll say dates, filings, transfers. The court likes nouns. The timer, the goose, honked, precise as kindness. We said goodnight like neighbors who don't share fences. Night set its metronome. I wrote a new card for the cupboard. Sunday rest. Porch closed. Beans labeled Wednesday. Walk, then sit. Letters to future self, dates included. Ethan, chair, then call. Me, 2 pages on loud days, 3 on quiet. Academic phrase of the day earned a second whisper, pre-commitment. Again, because even good habits like to wander. So I put a paperclip on the folder and taped the card where hands already go. The binder clip gripped and released twice. Memory intact. The lamp clicked like a period that knows its job. The latch said its single decent word. The heater exhaled in the key of relief. Before bed, I sat with the freesias because the florist had asked me to. Their perfume argued gently with the dark. I rested the certified mail receipt under a brass bird so it wouldn't wander when the cat did. I touched the USB that holds Victor's sandpaper sentences and let my hand be the last warm thing that file would feel tonight. Then I texted Ethan 1 word, seated, and he replied with a chair and a timestamp. I wrote seated for in my notebook and drew a small line to the previous 3, like rail cars linking. I turned off the lamp and let the room close the way competent stories do, without a cliffhanger, with a schedule, somewhere. A board investigator sharpened a pencil, a DA cued a file, a lender rehearsed a smile that would meet a different kind of room, and a son sat under fluorescent lights with strangers who were slowly becoming people with names in our house. The porch card waited to be kind and strict. The rosemary remembered the sun on my behalf. The hinge, newly low-voiced, agreed to try alto. And I slept, held by paper, steadied by chairs, and guarded by rules that do not need applause to keep their promises. Sunday arrived like a soft-edged square on the calendar. No tasks in bold, only the relief of white space. I made coffee that knew how to carry a quiet and checked the card I'd taped where hands already go. Porch closed, beans labeled Wednesday, walk, then sit, letters to future self, dates included. Ethan, chair, then call. Me, 2 pages on loud days, 3 on quiet. The house kept its choir, latch speaking its single honest syllable, lamp giving its gentle tisk, heater breathing like a reliable animal that likes its job. Rosemary at the back step lifted a ribbon of scent. A reminder that some plants do the remembering for you when your head is full. I wrote the first letter to my later self in a simple hand. Today the storm is not performing. We have paper that sits still and chairs that hold. You are allowed to be ordinary. Elder wisdom. When the world tries to sell you urgency, pay with a schedule instead. The receipt will be sleep. I dated the page because future me trusts stamps more than mood. I walked the neighborhood loop, hands inside sleeves the way a person keeps their opinions to themselves. The blue mailbox on Maple waited like a civil servant. Hinge unromantic. Purpose impeccable. A terrier in a sweater patterned like a bar graph performed his audit at our gate and signed off with one dignified tail wag. Light joke 1. I saluted the CFO of Small Dogs. He approved our quarter with strict generosity. Back home. I labeled the beans Wednesday because promises behave better when they have Tupperware. I left the porch closed on purpose. Boundaries need Sabbaths, too. Sienna posted something with soft filters and the caption, "Choosing gentleness." And 2 steady commenters arrived like metronomes, dates and names, until the thread stopped trying to be a fire. I practiced not clicking, which is a muscle. At noon, I sorted the stacks that now define our piece. Bank, board, DA, and slid a fresh divider labeled Ethan, seated. He texted at 12:37, a photo of a chair already waiting in a church basement for 6 o'clock. No caption. I wrote seated 5 on my notebook line and drew a little track joining it to the previous 4. Tiny rail cars of obedience. Academic phrase of the day. Moral hazard. The public argument that when people are insulated from consequences, they take riskier actions in families. It sounds like mom will fix it, or the house can be collateral. The cure is plain. Remove the cushion that enables the leap. For us, no bridge, no express, no deed talk, and a timer that honks regardless of anyone's narrative. I spent an hour labeling photos and documents with dates that respect memory. Caleb texted a calendar screenshot. Board interview with Mr. Lang on Wednesday. DA statements Tuesday afternoon, he added. Keep declining contact. Bring the USB. I placed the thumb drive in its small dish under a brass bird and told it, out loud, to stay put. Light joke 2. The smart fridge flashed, party mode available. I told it the only party we throw on Sundays is called silence. And it dimmed like a chastened confetti cannon. Quirky fact. Sidebar. The blue-gray crosshatch inside some envelopes is a security tint designed to defeat candling, holding the envelope to light to read the contents. It doesn't make secrets romantic, It just makes snooping inconvenient, which is all most privacy needs. I wrote a second letter to future me. Shorter: if a rumor knocks, ask for ID. If a threat smiles, ask for dates. If a sadness sits down, let it finish its soup. I slid it behind the porch rules because that's where hands already go when nerves forget their lessons. Around 2. The phone buzzed with a new number. I let it walk to voicemail. Victor's sandpaper voice suggested a private apology session where he could explain confession clauses and lighten our load. I saved the message to Leverage, audio, and sent a 2-word reply through Caleb. Documented. Declined. Out the window. Winter pretended to be kind, which is a start. I set the table for a late lunch. Beans with lemon. Bread that minds crumbs. A small bowl of olives Ethan had brought yesterday because a sober man's gift is salt without trouble. The lamp kept its green halo where the work is. The kettle exhaled like a competent nurse for 15 minutes. I ate like a person who believes boredom can be holy. At 3. My sister May called. Her voice a porch swing. We confused gossip with concern for exactly 9 seconds before she corrected both of us with a request for nouns. I read her the schedule. Tuesday, statements, Wednesday. Board interview, Thursday. Nothing public, Friday. Rest. I'll send cinnamon, she said, and a postcard that says, no bridges. I thanked her and wrote her name on a card titled, After, because hope is easier to carry when it has mail. I prepped a little folder for tomorrow labeled Sworn, a word that makes hands sit up straighter. I stacked clinic timestamps, bank siphons, UCC filing, cease and desist template with no quotes to cease. Victor's glossy toner promises. The cafe photos with their responsible timestamps. Ethan's chair receipts. The cat inspected the stack and approved with a blink. The feline seal that says, in her language, you may proceed without me. A knock at 4 surprised me because the porch was closed. Peephole, not Sienna, not her mother. Priscilla from town, holding a lemon bar in a foil tin like homework she wanted graded. Chain on, water poured. I wrote my first good retraction last year, she said, and I'd like to keep practicing. She handed me 2 sentences she'd drafted for when someone tries to auction gossip in a group chat. I was wrong to repeat hearsay. Please share documents if you're making claims. We edited the commas like a duet, and she left with her tin lighter and her spine heavier in the right way. Dusk moved into the room like a person who knows you. I walked the garden perimeter. Rails in a row like a sentence that finally chose its commas. Rosemary holding sunlight under the skin of each needle. The side gate hinge. Recently promoted from soprano. Attempted alto with promising restraint. I penciled a card. Titan Thursday. Mulch next Saturday if weather remembers manners. Freesia if budget allows. Ethan called before his meeting. They passed me a laminated card, he said. Rule number 1, no urgency profit. I want to make a copy for my wallet and one for the cupboard. Do, I said. People laminate lies. We can laminate rules. He asked if I remembered the first time he said, I did it, as a boy. I did. The scaffolding of a child learning to hold his own weight. That's all this is, I said. New scaffolding. Fewer adjectives, more verbs. He exhaled through the phone and sent the now familiar chair photo from the church basement. Seated, 6, joined the chain of small, obedient cars. The evening email brought 2 lines from Miss Patel. Interview set for Wednesday at 10. Preserve all paper. Do not attend. Bless a system that tells you what not to do. The DA shared a time for Tuesday's statements. Their signature block was the unshowy kind that makes you believe in forms. I printed both confirmations because heat-made ink sometimes persuades nerves better than pixels. Light joke 3. The goose timer on my stove honked as if to remind me to close the kitchen ceremony. I saluted our dignified waterfowl and turned off the burner like a stagehand drawing curtains. I ironed pillowcases because smooth cotton convinces the mind to put its fists down. I slid the sworn folder into the simple binder under a tab that used to be labeled Events and is now labeled Evidence of Quiet. I propped the porch rules against a glass so I'd see them in the morning without asking who I am. Before bed. I added one more line to my earlier letter. If tomorrow brings noise, let the nouns front the conversation. Let the chain do its job. Let the calendar carry the weight your heart shouldn't. The lamp clicked like a period that knows its place. The latch said its single decent word. The heater exhaled in the key of relief. Somewhere. A bored investigator sharpened a pencil. A prosecutor organized a file. A lender rehearsed a smile for a room that will ask for dates. And my son sat with strangers who are becoming less strange by identifying the exact sentences that used to run ahead of them. And in our house, which has stopped auditioning for disaster, the quiet didn't pretend to be heroism. It was just the sound a good system makes when no one is kicking it. I turned toward sleep with the belief that tomorrow will be the same shape as its card and that forgiveness, when it's ready, will arrive like rosemary, stubborn and useful, and mostly for people who plan to cook. Tuesday wore a suit with clear pockets, everything visible, nothing ornate. I packed the sworn folder, slipped the little blue USB into its dish to remind my hands where truth lives, then into my bag to remind the system. The house offered its choir, latch saying its single honest syllable, lamp giving its gentle tisk, heater breathing like a reliable animal that enjoys being useful, and I walked out with a peppermint in my pocket because sweetness that waits is a small, portable bravery. At the DA's office. A clerk guided us to a conference room where the walls looked like they had learned to keep secrets without becoming accomplices. Caleb set the recorder on the table with the reverence of a person placing a candle. We gave nouns, clinic timestamps, bank siphons into the maiden name account, the UCC filing listing household fixtures, Victor's letter with borrowed gloss, the voicemail with its sandpaper persuasion, the cafe photos where a pen hovered over a confession line like a friendly trap. The assistant DA interrupted only for dates. "We'll contact Mr. Lang," she said. "Decline all meetings not attended by counsel." A sentence like ballast. Elder wisdom. When you're in a room that can move levers, let the levers see paper, not performance. Drama burns, documents built. By afternoon, Ethan texted the now familiar photo, rows of folding chairs, sneakers, a coffee urn. Seated, 7. I drew the 7th little railcar in my notebook, a chain of small obediences beginning to look like a train with a destination. Light joke 1. The fridge celebrated with exactly 2 ice cubes and then minded its business like a reformed exclamation point. Wednesday arrived with a clipboard's confidence. We stayed home, per Miss Patel's instructions, while the lender board interviewed Victor. At 10:42, Caleb's phone buzzed. Interview underway. At 11:19, follow-ups requested, licensing under review. At 11:51, they asked for his confession clause templates. He offered adjectives. They asked again. We drank coffee that had been taught to carry a plan and waited like adults, meaning we did laundry and labeled receipts while the wheels turned where we couldn't see them. Academic phrase of the day. Normalcy bias. The public argument that humans underestimate the likelihood and impact of disruption and therefore underprepare. The cure is rehearsal and checklists. Porch rules on the door. Sleep before yes on the cupboard. Chairs at 6 o'clock no matter how confident you feel at 5. At noon. Sienna tried a new channel, a group text with 3 of my relatives, a latte photo, and a caption about outside manipulators stoking paranoia. I replied with the calmest sentence I know. Court prefers dates and filings. Please share yours. 2 cousins responded with names, and the thread became a museum of quiet. Afternoon brought a message from Miss Patel that wore its authority neatly. Preliminary determination, unlicensed conduct likely, consumer harm inquiry open, cease unsolicited contact, preserve all exhibits. I printed it because heat-made ink sometimes persuades nerves better than pixels. Light joke 2, the printer, very proud of its redemption arc, produced straight margins and then made a tiny beep like a shy confetti cannon. I told it modesty suits it. In the evening, I walked to the blue mailbox to send one last certified packet, photos labeled in a font that minds its own business. Voicemail burned to a thumb drive. Return receipt postcard clipped on with a gem paperclip. Quirky fact, sidebar, Post-it notes stick and unstick because the glue is made of tiny acrylic microspheres that touch the surface like a crowd of polite feet, many points of contact. None of them pushy. A design accident that became a tool. I like an accident that chooses to be helpful. Thursday practiced being ordinary. Caleb came by with a narrow binder labeled Outcomes, not Epilogues, and a grin that knew better than to perform. "The DA is drafting subpoenas," he said. "The board referred licensing violations, and your cease and desist from yesterday, their counsel has acknowledged receipt." He set down a second folder for Ethan, receipts that prove chairs. Inside, 7 small photos, each stamped, each boring in the way survival likes. Ethan slid the 8th one in that night, and the chain on our porch sounded like a metronome that had finally chosen a tempo. Friday. The town remembered its good manners. Priscilla from town forwarded a group chat where a rumor attempted choreography and 2 steady replies. Dates, names, turned the music off. The florist handed me 3 freesias. On the house if you sit while smelling them. And I did. Because obedience to decent instructions is a muscle I want to keep. Darren texted a picture of his work boots on a welcome mat that wasn't ours with the caption, "Install finished, no filming, invoice attached." I wrote "paid" beside his name in the simple binder and felt a fence rail settle somewhere in my chest. Saturday carried the light step of a day that doesn't intend to audition. Miss Patel phoned with the kind of update that respects calendars. "We've issued a notice of violation. Mr. Lang has counsel. Do not engage." The DA followed with, "Bring yourselves Tuesday, sworn statements. Then go home and make soup." I salted beans to the corners like a person who believes in ritual more than speeches. Light joke 3. The goose timer honked at exactly 10 minutes when a neighbor tried to deliver unsolicited advice. We apologized to etiquette, poured water, and wrote porch minutes because habits are how rooms stay honest. Sunday, I mailed the last thank you notes. One to Miss Patel for the courtesy of dates. One to the DA for the dignity of questions. One to the florist for instructions that include chairs. I wrote myself a letter that began, "Today the house does not audition for disaster," and ended, "You are allowed to live small on purpose." Ethan called from the church basement at 6 with the now familiar photo, seated, 9. He added a new line, "They told me to say out loud, I don't do urgency anymore." I did. It felt like a door took a deep breath. Monday, I took a short train to the sea, out and back, the way a person might rinse a glass. I brought nothing fancy, just the program where I'd written rules and the peppermint that forgives, slow dissolves. The horizon did its one job, continue, when I returned. The latch said click in its reliable tone, and the house answered with the humility of a well-made chair, back at the table. I filed the last forms under weather, calm. Caleb closed his binder with the satisfaction of a man who prefers nouns. "What you've built here," he said, gesturing at the porch card, the cupboard notes, the stack titled "Boring That Saves Lives," will outlive a dozen storms. I poured him water. "The schedule gets the credit," I said. He nodded, then stood so quietly the cat stayed asleep. our highest honor. I wrote one final card for the cupboard. Aftercare, every day. No, tonight. No bridge. Mercy after nouns. Porch, chain on, water poured, timer visible. Ethan, chair, then call. Me, walk, soup, read 2 pages on loud days, 3 on quiet. If a rumor knocks, ask for ID. If a threat smiles, ask for dates. When night arrived, it didn't make a speech. The lamp clicked like a period that knows its place. The latch said it's single. Decent word. The heater exhaled in the key of relief. I set the freesias by the banister portrait and told the paint to behave, somewhere. A board investigator closed a file. A prosecutor drafted a sentence that belonged to the public record. A lender learned that gloss costs more than it pays. And my son sat in a circle of chairs under fluorescent lights that were done apologizing for being practical. We are not a triumph. We are a schedule. And that, I have learned, is the shape of peace. The house quiets itself the way a kind nurse tidies a room. Lamp dimmed to a private green. Latch rehearsing the single syllable it knows. The heater breathing in a steady key that asks for nothing back. Paper sleeps where hands already go. The binder closes without strain. Brass birds keep small proofs from wandering outside. Rosemary remembers the sun on our behalf, lifting a ribbon of scent that finds the door and forgives the day for being practical. A porch card tells visitors how to be kind to a boundary. Chain on, water poured, 10 minutes, and a timer. Dignified as a goose. Keeps the clock honest so feelings can afford to soften. Names have been said properly and dates have been read aloud. Offices with ballast took our nouns and gave us procedures in return. The rumor mill. Denied adjectives. Learned to ask the 2 questions that tame heat, dates, names, and conversations dissolved into rooms that could be trusted again. A lender with gloss met a desk that prefers verbs. A pen met paper without trying to be a performance. A son sat in a folding chair and chose obedience over fireworks. One evening at a time, until a small train of photographs began to look like a route the heart could take without getting lost. Tomorrow's work is plain and decent. A walk around the fence that finally learned its commas. Soup salted to the corners. A letter to the future with a stamp that proves the day happened. And a short train to the sea. Out and back. Because departures teach returns to be generous. In this soft-edged night, urgency runs out of excuses and sleeps where it won't wake anyone. Mercy arrives on schedule. After the nouns have done their jobs, and the house, no longer auditioning for disaster, agrees to hold its people with the uncomplicated grace of a well-made chair.